All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I am Ming549, joined by the lovely OU tier leader, Finchinator. Taking it old school today, looking at some of the SPL tiebreak games, specifically the Sword Shield game between BIHI of the Classiest and Ox the Fox from the Tigers. So, Finch, toss the mic to you and do a little intro.
Hey, thank you guys. Yeah, Finch here. Very happy to be with you, Ming. We got the first of potentially two or three tiebreak games between the congregation of the Classiest, BE's team, and the Tigers, which is Ox the Fox's team in the far corner. So this game, the winner will not win or the loser will not lose the tournament, but a ton is at stake in every tiebreak game after the main series came to a tie. The Tigers selected SS with Ox the Fox, and he's using a pretty generic team here. Definitely reads like a balanced or bulky offense, pretty up the middle. He has metagame staples like Dragapult, Landorus T, Melmetal, Clefable, Ferrothorn. Nothing unorthodox. In this game, however, there are some unorthodox strategies if you look over to BIHI's side. He's using a hyper offensive team, and we do see a lot of teams with Grassy Train plus Heatran on hyper offense, even with the Stealth Rock Air Balloon Heatran, which we'll likely see here. But Galarian Moltres, not a super common Pokemon, and fitting Kartana onto these teams is also pretty challenging, so it's very cool to see BIHI with this combination. Noticeably, he is lacking an Enforcer like Weavile, electing to go with the aforementioned Moltres Galar. Weavile we tend to see a ton on these teams, even Scizor as well, so a different cast of characters. Looking at the matchup briefly, Dragonite for Ox the Fox. If he can avoid clicking a contact move in the Heatran, which is likely Flame Body, and he's able to break the Balloon for Earthquake, then he's going to potentially be able to sweep from pretty early on in the game, especially if it's a Dragon Dance plus Roost variant to preserve multi-scale. Very threatening. If it's plus Speed Nature at +1, it could even outrun Dragapult, and it should also be able to take care of Rillaboom and Blaziken as well, being a nice check to them. However, on the BIHI side, Moltres Galar, if it's able to hit Hurricanes and potentially even flinch Fiery Wrath, very threatening. Its dual stab doesn't really have a ton of resists on Ox's team. In fact, there's only one flying resist, and there's only one dark resist. So yeah, also potentially Heatran could force something like Dragonite to come in, and if Dragonite takes status, then it's going to be unlikely to sweep. So that could go a long way as well. Both Dragapult sets, could go in a number of ways. Ox's team typically would be choice specs, but we could see a number of possible sets, and they could play a large role too. So we're gonna have to wait and see how the game plays out. Do you have any other thoughts, May?
Actually, I had a question for you. So you kind of did a very nice breakdown of the teams and what the overall game plan is. But what do you think the right first steps are for both BIHI and Ox in terms of their leads? What do you think would get BIHI and Ox?
So let's start with BIHI, since he's going to be the aggressor here. He's definitely not going to want to lead with Rillaboom or Blaziken or Moltres Galar right off the bat. Rillaboom's really there for grassy terrain. It's not going to be a big threat against Melmetal, Ferrothorn, Landorus, Dragapult, Dragonite. Pretty lackluster matchup there. And Blaziken is more so in a late game role. If you can weaken the Dragonite, you could potentially sweep with it. However, Heatran is a great option for a lead. It's going to be the Stealth Rocker, and it's almost certainly going to be Air Balloon, Flame Body. That means that you can't one-shot it with anything, unless it's like a Choice Band Melmetal, which then you're slower, risking taking a Will-O-Wisp or a Magma Storm, so yeah, it's a pretty safe lead. However, Dragapult is another option. There's no Ghost Resist on Ox the Fox's team, and it's also possible we see a non-choice Dragapult from BIHI, which could be status. It could be, a number of possible things. Dragapult's got a very deep move pool. We've seen Spell Tag, we've seen Choice Specs, we've seen Life Orb. Focus Sash is more of a Generation 9 exploit, but sometimes these trends move their way backwards, if you will. So it'll be interesting to see what comes with that. As for Ox the Fox, personally, he could lead anything but Dragonite, really. I wouldn't be surprised if he leads with Melmetal too, because it matches up poorly in Heatran. But if he's got a Thunder Wave Clefable, or he's got a especially defensive Landorus, or his own Dragapult, all seem like pretty good leads. From there, the game is just going to be a matter of if Ox can maneuver around a Heatran in the early game, breaking a balloon, and without taking a ton of damage, he's going to be in good shape. If BIHI can make a lot of progress with Heatran and Dragapult early on, he's going to be in good shape. But BIHI is going to be put on a timer because he can't withstand Dragonite long term, and Hazards look very good into it. So we're going to have to wait and see. But I'd say with the combination of Hazards and Dragonite, Ox has a slight advantage on it.
I was going to say the hazard game for Ox really does mean a lot because you imagine, well, there's no removal actually, just on BH's team. Like nothing is going to be packing defog on.
Barring defog like Scarf Kartana, which if you're locking into that, I mean, A, it's almost certainly not that, but B, if you have to do that, you're giving Dragonite a free chance to set up. You know, you're giving them a free chance to set up Hazards again. You know, there's essentially no recourse to Hazards.
Yep. So yeah, I like the Ferrothorn lead. Maybe Clef, maybe Lando, whatever. Well, Lando's probably
I'm not sure about Ferrothorn just because of how bad it is in Heatran. So typically speaking, Clefable actually isn't as horrible into Heatran if it's not taunt, and they'll run Will-O-Wisp or Toxic a lot on these offenses to try and catch things like Dragonite. So I would be surprised to see Ferrothorn. It could be Clefable, more likely Landorus or Dragapult from Ox, and then again from BIHI, I'm expecting Heatran or Dragapult.
All right, well, let's get right into it, see what those leads are, and we can kind of just take, we can kind of survey the field after this turn one. So
yeah, right from jump, Dragapult here. Typically speaking, Landorus in this generation are a lot more specially defensive than physically defensive, so even if it's a Choice Specs Draco, or the rare Choice Specs Hydro Pump, which we see once every now and then, most Landorus T are EV to live comfortably if it's Draco at that. So you could get off a knockoff, you could go for Stealth Rock, although on this team, my guess is it would be a defog variant of Landorus. So, you know, knockoff, Earthquake, Toxic U-turn, there's a ton of ways to do it. I'd be surprised if he went to Clefable immediately, but that's an option.
We'll see what happens here.
Yep.
Oh, it's the Wisp pull right off. Very nice. And then the knockoff.
Yeah, so that's something we see more in Generation 9, but still works here. In Spell Tag, you know, a set we saw a lot earlier in Generation 8, but not as recently. However, it's really good into balance teams. You miss having, like, the ability to spam Choice Spec Shadow Ball into, like, balances that don't have a Ghost Resist. But when you don't have, like, say, a especially defensive Heatran, which Ox doesn't, Hex can be very, very threatening still. So you're interested to see what comes of that.
Absolutely, and we see Ferrothorn come out now on the Hex, as you mentioned before. We see it's lefty's Ferro, and now Hazards start going up, you know, perhaps, from Ox's side?
Yeah, I mean, Hazards are almost certainly going to come. He's more than happy to take a Wisp here, in part because he could have Heal Bell or Aromatherapy on a Clefable, or even Dragonite, although less likely on Dragonite. But also, that trade-off is huge. Ferrothorn isn't going to be the check to win conditions like Moltres or Heatran, and Kartana is never going to sweep a team with Melmetal, Dragapult, and Dragonite. If it's Scarf, it could beat Dragapult, but it's not going to be able to lock into any one move clean. And if it's not Scarf, it will always get revenge killed by Dragapult. So Ferrothorn's health is not valuable for anything in particular besides setting up hazards and maybe one-time checking a Rillaboom or Dragapult. So yeah.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what we see here. We see some spikes go up, trading for that burn, and you have to imagine just the same. Oh, well, that's an interesting turn there. Right?
Yeah, you probably predicted the Clefable, which, I mean, on a Hex, that would make a ton of sense. It would do 20-25%, but Ox sees right through it, gets another layer of spikes up, and that's good for his game plan for sure. Worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely, and moreover than that, reveals the Pult is maybe a little bit lacking on the coverage side. So we see the double status. We see the Hex. What do you think that last move could be right now?
It's probably just Draco. It could be darts in theory. This is just like a lead Pult meant to kind of, I'm going to force as much status and as much chip on your team as possible, even if I don't get kills. In this game, he status 2 Pokemon. The main issue is, when you run into Ferrothorn, it's durable enough to get up multiple hazards here. If you run into things like Landorus, you know, it's going to get rocks up and chip you, but it's going to lose. Or if you run into, say, a Clefable, you could Thunder Wave and then Hex could 2-hit KO you. So this is a really, really good position for Ox, even if he loses the 1v1 here. So.
Absolutely. And you have to imagine that is kind of what will happen here. We do see a nice and healthy 45% from that Hex. but in exchange you have 3 layers of spikes that have gone up. Now Clef comes in. So,
Yeah,
all right, you just mentioned the kind of statusing and kind of a little bit of wall breaking purposes for this. Both you've statused at this point the Lando, you've statused the Pharaoh. Looks like you're getting status up on this Clef. You think that's worth it for
I
Ox?
mean, it's definitely worth it. It's not a position you want to be in with 3 layers of spikes hitting 4 Pokemon, 5 if it's not Air Balloon Heatran or if the balloon gets popped. So yeah.
And also you have to imagine Stealth Rock coming up here. It is Balloon Tran, however, like you mentioned.
Yeah,
just a
balloon,
Moonblast.
so that's popped already. And this, in my opinion, was a misstep. And it's not going to make a huge difference, but in my opinion, you go for Thunder Wave in that position if you are Ox. Sorry. If you are BIHI. And we see Ox instead go for Thunder Wave on the Stealth Rock Heatran. And Ox, knowing the trends, he knows it's not going to be like Flash Cannon or even Taunt Heatran immediately. Balloon typically on these teams is Stealth Rock, Magma Storm, Earth Power, and then one of Wisp or Toxic. You'll see a lot on these hyper offensive teams. It could in theory be Taunt last, but if he goes for Taunt on turn 8, then you could just switch to Landorus or switch to Dragapult or even Dragonite more safely now that Balloon is broken and it's not going to be status and Taunt. Kind of process of elimination there. So Thunder Wave there is always the safe play. And now that this is Thunder Wave Heatran, and we've kind of read into the fact that it's not Taunt, Clefable actually 1v1s this if you don't crit Magma Storm with Heatran. And you look at the rest of BIHI's team, nothing switches into Moonblast. So now Clefable has gone from being kind of a neutral Pokemon to A, beating its would-be check, and B, any switch has to take the potential Moonblast and 25% from spikes, barring the Moltres, which takes super effective damage from Moonblast. So right off the bat, we're seeing how good Ox's matchup with those spikes and the durability of his team is.
And you're just adding more fuel to the fire, get Stealth Rocks up, and like you mentioned, this Clef is going to sit here and 1v1 the Heatran.
Yeah, barring again a critical hit Magma Storm or a special defense drop is great, but he's already burnt 2 turns of trapping there. He has to hit Magma Storm through paralysis, and he doesn't on the first attempt. Also, the chance for a special attack drop from Moonblast or a miss, as we see there. And lo and behold, the Clefable can get out unscathed. I will say here, in my opinion, on this turn, I'm always U-turning with Landorus. While Earthquake looks like the safe play because it kills the Heatran and you're in a commanding position, you still know that your Clefable is walling this Heatran every single time. And it's already used about half of its Magma Storm PP. So even if it gets a special defense drop, unless it gets a drop and a crit afterwards, while hitting through paralysis, then you're safe. But if you click Earthquake on something like the Rillaboom, or like the Moltres, then you can put yourself in a position where they get a setup check. So you really want to keep tempo here if you're Ox. And this is kind of a tightrope to walk because you want to not take risks while you're ahead, but at the same time, you need to not be too passive because a great player like BIHI, who is using an aggressive team, it's implied he's going to be aggressive, can easily flip his position. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. U-turn is the probably safe play here. Because again, you mentioned the Earth Power, you need to fish for those drops, and also the Herculean task of hitting Magma Storm through paralysis, which, I can probably say I've never done something like that. But we see it's actually boost Moltres.
Passive Earthquake on the Moltres. And now this gives BIHI a chance. But we see right off the bat, it's a slower variant of Moltres. Fiery Wrath does a lot there, so it's probably modest.
41%.
Right off the bat, if I am BIHI here, I have to switch. The 20-30% chance of flinch, if you don't flinch, you lose a game on the spot. Because Moltres is your win condition, and you just chipped its primary switching. So that's great. That's an opening for BIHI, but if you don't get a flinch here, then you lose. So my guess is he's going to fodder off either the Heatran or the Rillaboom. Heatran could be great if you catch a double Iron Bash or the potential Flame Body, and Rillaboom is just kind of useless in this game. We're seeing right off the bat that grassy terrain really isn't going to do much, so yeah.
You do see that Heatran come out.
Going to take all those hazards after Balloon is popped. Superpower is a great prediction from Ox. Are we going to see the Flame Body?
Of course we do.
That's a big opening for the Moltres. It helps Kartana a little bit too, but truth be told, unless it's like a Swords Dance Timid Kartana that boosts speed, and somehow has the ability to muscle past Dragonite, which, fitting all that onto one set, if you can, then my hat's off to you. But yeah, I don't think that's going to be the case. Then I still don't think Kartana is a win condition, because you have Ferrothorn alive, you have Dragonite at full health with Roost. If it's not Scarf, you have that Dragapult at full. Even a Thunderwave Clefable taking a +1 Leaf Blade from full, giving you a myriad of possible counterplay for most Kartana sets. But losing Heatran and turn for a burn is a good trade, because the one Pokemon that looks good on BIHI's team is that Moltres Galar. So yeah.
And maybe we see the Moltres Galar just come out.
Probably not, because Thunderwave is a risk here. Dragapult is a pretty sensible play. It's not going to kill this with Hex, but it will leave it in range of pretty much anything. You didn't want to go Blaziken because it gave the Dragonite a chance to set up, and that's like another concept here. If Dragonite gets a Dragon Dance at this point in the game, it just sweeps. And this is why Ox's position is, so commanding. So, BIHI wants to put himself in a position where whatever he has either can threaten Dragonite or can get like a slow U-turn into Kartana, and then maybe a Choice Scarf Smart Strike can, either do half or get some crits or something, or maybe it's Air Balloon Heatran with Stone Edge. There's got to be something, is the point. So yeah.
And then we see Rillaboom come in after the Pulse has been sacked off, takes all those beautiful hazards, and just finishes the job with a knockoff on this very weakened Melee. And Life Orb too.
Yeah, and now you have the option to U-turn against the Dragonite, or more likely, if the Dragapult comes in, you could get a chip off with Grassy Glide, which, if you are like a Stone Edge Blaziken, which could be a win condition here, then you can at least have that in range as well, so that's always good.
I don't even know. I don't think he could Grassy Glide, because like you mentioned before, if the Dragapult just sets up with DD, it might just be lights out.
It's never going to be Dragon Dance on this. I bet my life savings on that. It's almost certainly going to be Specs. So the thing with Dragon Dance Dragapult is you really bad into Clefable and Melmetal, and we're just going to see him Grassy Glide. Yeah, it's probably going to do like 40, 45, 46. He's almost certainly going to die to either Shadow Ball or U-turn out. Yep, U-turn out, brings into Landorus, and basically the idea from Ox here is he doesn't want the Dragapult to be choice locked when he kills this, to not give the Moltres a chance to set up. But BIHI also wants this dead so he can bring in the Blaziken or the Moltres for free. So they're both kind of fishing for position. Knowing Ox has more Pokemon alive, and this Landorus is disposable because it's useless and has U-turn, it's a great play for him to go for that U-turn.
We do see the Rillaboom just finish that Lando off here with that Grassy Glide. Life Orb chip, bringing you a little lower, but not quite enough. And now we see the Dragonite come in. We see Cart come in.
This is almost certainly going to be Dragon Dance. My guess is it's going to be Ice Punch plus Earthquake plus Roost. Kartana here, if it's Toxic, could potentially go off. Otherwise, you're hoping to crit Smart Strike. You're hoping to avoid, Ice Punch to a KO or Freeze. It's looking pretty dire for BIHI at this point.
And we do see that Dragon Dance come out. How common would you say Fire Punch is on these D-Knights? That's something that
Fire Punch is pretty uncommon. Now, Superpower plus Ice Punch is a set we see on occasion. But on a team like this, on a bulk of your team composition, you're almost certainly going to see Roost, so it could actually be a check to Volcanion and Heatran and potentially even soft check Rillaboom and Kartana, as we're seeing in this matchup, and also have that longevity against Blaziken, which has recently become a really good Pokemon in the metagame. So Roost Dragonite is like huge towards its defensive profile, and being a more longevity seeking win condition. And when it runs Roost, it never fits Fire Punch. So yeah.
I see. Okay. I mean, that's something I've seen tech in the past for, Corvs, Skarms, and Kartana, stuff of that nature.
Yeah, the main thing is, on Corviknight in this generation, Iron Defense is actually less common. So you have a million chances to fish for a freeze in that matchup, and it doesn't really beat you either.
True. All right. So we have the TD up. Let's see what happens. It is Toxic Heart and also Scarf. So that's, pretty huge.
It might still be quicker at +2, and it is quicker.
It is. That's insane. And it tanks.
Which is probably a roll, but this is huge because now if you have enough Protect turns with Heatran, you can beat this Dragonite. Now, does beating Dragonite win the game? Probably not, because the combination of Clefable and Dragapult should be able to beat Moltres. But it at least makes it interesting, right? So maybe
Yeah,
like a double
keeps it a game.
here,
Keeps it a game.
or a protect here, then you fodder Rillaboom, then a double protect afterward type of sequence. Roosts on protect could also go a long way. Earthquake is the right play here. I assume we just see a Rillaboom fodder. Yup, that makes all the sense in the world. Roost
on the
is a
roost.
great play there from
Very
Ox.
nice play.
But again, is it going to be too little too late? I still think without like Fiery Wrath, Hurricane Confusion, or some critical hits, it's not going to be enough. And we do see Roost coming in handy there. Moltres comes in here now on the Earthquake. And I assume we're going to see the Blaziken foddered off to an Ice Punch here.
Yeah, and we do see the Blaziken come out, and then there's the Roost.
Oh, and that's going to be that.
And that is
it's going to just kill with Ice Punch now. But even if he didn't kill with Ice Punch, looking at this game, and a great game from Ox, all things considered. Obviously, the Toxic Mist stunk, but felt like he was still favored. But even if, in theory, the Dragonite died from taking Toxic a turn earlier or getting a Roost turn wrong, Dragapult could come in and click Choice Specs Draco Meteor, or Clefable can come in first and click Thunder Wave, and barring a Thunder Wave miss or an immediate Hurricane Confusion, it's going to be pretty hard for BIHI to... If you click Thunder Wave on the first turn with the Clefable, and then Moonblast connects, it's always going to be in range for Draco Meteor from Choice Specs. So, seeing as we saw Boots revealed on the Moltres Galar, it wasn't going to be like a weird rest set either. It was pretty impossible for BIHI to win without either Ox mis-sequencing or without a substantial amount of luck. So, Ox was able to secure the game with Dragonite, but even if he didn't, he was certainly favored to win the game nevertheless.
Yeah, absolutely. That Toxic Mist did stink, but I'm wondering if there was maybe even a line where we... So after the Toxic was thrown out for the first time, do we potentially see some lines where we actually keep the cart? So you fodder maybe the Rillaboom early, you get Blaziken in, and start doing some of these shenanigans a bit earlier, and then you can just keep cart for maybe late game if you have to, because it is Scarf Cart, so we can threaten out maybe the Dragapult, maybe look at the Clefable story, look at the Ferris story.
But if you're Toxic, then you probably are dropping Smart Strike, because Knockoff and Sacred Sword is very hard to drop. And on this team in particular, you really need Sacred Sword to revenge kill a number of things. So my guess then would be that you don't have the ability to kill Clefable at +1. And the game is still in a position where Ox can't lose without something like a Thunder Wave miss or a critical hit. So again, it's a game of weighted odds where, you're talking the difference between 0% chance if you miss the Toxic versus 5 or 10 or 15% chance. But Ox positioned himself in a commanding enough way and had a good enough matchup, especially with the early game hazards, to where it was always going to be uphill. And that hill just became insurmountably steep due to the initial Toxicness.
Yeah, for sure. And this is kind of how we imagined the game would play out, right?
Yeah.
With BIHI trying to gun for it with the his Galarian Moltres, and then Ox playing a little more of a slower game, just getting up all his hazards, and eventually getting D-Knight in on a free setup turn.
Absolutely.
In front of that. Yeah, and that is exactly how it played out. So, good foresight from you to, kind of see that. And a very clutch win from Ox the Fox for the Tigers, giving them that early critical 1-0 lead in the tiebreaks.
Definitely, and it was a good game from BIHI too. It felt like his team didn't synergize quite as well as Ox's team. He maybe made some risks that didn't pay off in the builder, but game-wise, he saw the vision, he saved the Moltres, he played the early game aggressively with the Dragapult, and it just didn't quite amount to enough progress into a bulky team like this, but it was a great try, and overall a really interesting, telling game one of the tiebreak in SSOU.
Absolutely. And I think that is all I have to say. Any closing remarks for this game? We've kind of been going over
I really enjoyed this game. SS, an overhated generation, but truth be told, a very balanced generation, and it was super exciting seeing two of the better players of it come out against each other here.
All right, I couldn't say it any better. Well, in that case, To the viewers, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us for this game, one of the tie breaks. I have been Ming549 here with Finchinator. And yeah, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff if you haven't already, and we will catch you in the next one. Goodbye.
Thank you. Like, comment, subscribe, and have a great day, everyone. Bye.